3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Lightforge. This is Adwukta.
This is Merps. Hope you guys are having a good week. Let's talk about Hearthstone.
I'm calling it now, by the way, before we talk about Hearthstone. This goatee is being shaved off within a week. This will be the last Lightforge, if you're watching this on YouTube, that you get to see this lovely goatee that I've been nursing for 3 months.
Did brand new finally get to you?
What happened? No. There was always an end date for this. This isn't a permanent look. And I think it's outlived its time. And it is time to become a normal looking human being again. Also, brand new said I can't have this anymore by the time we get a photo shoot for our wedding at the end of October. But I could have kept this until the end of October, almost like the mid-October. I'm choosing to end it early.
Excellent. All right. Well, you know what? Good job, brand new. Thank you for your public service. All right. But anyways, let's talk a little bit about the arena, of which, unsurprisingly, there's been a lot of complaints about. I'm going
to set it out. Everyone's complaining about Mage as a 54% win rate. That's not that bad. It's also not the only class with a positive win rate, because sometimes maybe the winner, it doesn't have a very high percent win rate, but then nobody else has a particularly good one. So it's one person's at 54 and everyone else at 49, and you're like, oh, that's kind of not fair. Well, Mage is at 53.6 right now. It's gotten as high as 54 point something, and Rogue and Priest are at 52.4. So there's a 1 point difference between Mage and Rogue and Priest. It's statistically speaking on HS Replay, it's not that much of a problem. At the bottom, Warriors and Shamans don't touch them. They're below 45%. So that's fair. We're in the meta in need of a micro adjust. I'm not saying we're not in need of a micro adjust, but statistically, it's not bad. Now, feelings-wise, God, losing to mages nowadays feels like losing to priests back in the day, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. And, okay, so for those of you who haven't played Arena and are wondering what this is all about, okay? Mages right now just feel really bad. If you remember, I made a video way back when about, the problem with warriors and how we sort of conceptualize the warrior problem. And in my video, I said, it's not about the win rate. I think it's very similar, because back then the warrior win rate was 55%?
Yeah, it was pretty similar. Yeah.
Yeah, it was pretty similar. But it was just about how you were losing. And right now, mages, what they do is they generate lots of cards. They safely,
keyword generate, safely, not draw, generate.
Yes, they generate lots of cards. They very safely play off the board. At any given moment, they can flip the board on you, and you don't have any previous reads or knowledge or any of that. A good example coming from me was I was ahead on the board significantly. I varied the health on my board. I thought it was up pretty huge. And then on turn 7, the mage had no board. He plays double Firebrand, Arcane Breath to deal 10 split damage.
Perfectly split damage.
Perfectly split damage. So it's perfect. There's no RNG for him to kind of mess up and give me something on the board. And it completely cleared my board, and it gave him double 3/4s, and I lost. That was it. It was too much for me to come back from. And the entire time, when I am sort of calculating, health and trying to play around this, trying to play around that, trying to figure out, okay, what can happen? This guy, he sort of just, stalled for a little bit, and he's like, all right, perfect removal for any situation. Boom, I just won the game now. And there's no way for me to literally play around double Firebrand with a small spell. And that's sort of it. That's, it just feels frustrating, right? I felt frustrated with that game. And that's a perfect example of what's happening with Mage these days.
Yeah, so if you do the math on that, you've spent 7 mana on that. You've used 2 cards because you get the card back from the dragon thing. So you've used 2 cards, you spent 7 mana. You got 2 3/4s. So you're okay. You're getting basically War Golem stats for 7 mana, and then as a bonus, you get 10 perfect damage of removal. Which by the way, 10 perfect damage of removal is worth more than a Flame Strike. By Blizzard's own mana costing calculations, because we kind of know that from the Demon Hunter cards, where you get like a board, and that's kind of it. So you just get a free better than Flame Strike ability from that. Now, yeah, sure, it's a 3-card combo, but Firebrands are everywhere. They're auto picks. Dragon's Breaths are also everywhere. They're a little less of auto picks, but they're still very high up there in picks. And you can all generate all of these pretty easily through all these Mage generation cards. And that's just one example, right? The real problem with Mage is not that particular example. It's that they have like 50 different ways to do basically that way you described.
Yeah, so let's look. I'm just going to break down the Mage top 10 top 10 cards, according to HS Replay. Basically, the top 10 cards that make up their decks, because it's in the highest percentage of decks. So you have Polymorph and Fireball, once again, playing off the board. They can remove. Firebrand is the #1 minion that you're going to see. It's offered a lot. It's common, right? It's a 3-drop, which... as we know, 3-drops are rare. And then we have Wand Thief, which begins the problem of them keeping on discovering stuff. And then Flame Strike, Frostbolt, Primordial Studies, which, they discover once again. They discover something big. Azure Explorer, they discover something big. Arcane Amplifier, more value. Star Scryer, they get to just go find more spells. And then I'll tack on number 11 just because it is very relevant. Onyx Mage Scribe, which for them, look, how many spells did I just list? Is it easy for them to get the Mage Scribe off? Oh, yeah, it is. So that's Mage. They have all the tools, right, to push you off the board early with the removals. And then they just start the generation process, whether they're generating dragons with Azure Explorer, or generating more spells. That's sort of the game that they're playing, and people get really frustrated because you as the non-mage facing a mage, you have to do all this work to try to play around stuff and then calculate and do all this risk assessment, when it seems like the mage has to do none of this. And that's frustrating, right? It's like the work that one side has to do to just gain slight advantages, while the other side has to just like herp a derp and generate cards and spit out cards, and that feels bad.
Yeah. So I know we drew the example to Warrior earlier, but I think this is way less bad feeling than facing Warriors. Because facing Warriors, the problem was Gennard, right? Which is just 1 card on turn 1 and then you're done. Like it's way more unfair feeling, in my opinion. And Gennard is like a 200 rated card and all of that. Firebrand's a 200 rated card too. But at least you're making the mage like do stuff, right? Like the stuff that they're doing isn't hard, but they at least are doing a bunch of stuff. And some of the setups take multiple turns, so you can like see it. You can't stop it because the setups are all in their hand. They're not like on the board that you can remove. But you do have that kind of I don't know if it's not interactivity, but it's at least like a warning. You also have no reads because they're just drawing whatever, they're like discovering stuff, right? Like it's all random cards. So, but you have like a warning that something may or may not be coming, like however much use that is. So that's like the whole mage thing. And we could talk about how problematic mage is and all that whenever they do micro adjusts, which remember, this is the August expansion. They have historically done micro adjust on the August expansion extremely late. Like after Labor Day, after September, after August ends kind of late. So it's not surprising to me that they haven't done a micro adjust yet. It would not be surprising to me if they don't micro adjust for a couple more weeks. So this is the meta that we might be living in for a while. So let's figure out how to deal with mage. The thing that Merps emphasized the most is the biggest problem with mage, which is that they are off the board, right? So if they are off the board, you can't mess with them, really. So, not directly anyway, because you can't make them discard cards or anything. You can't, right? You just got to be on the board. But if you're on the board, you're vulnerable to them counterplaying you, because they always know what you're doing because you're the one on the board, and then they get to counter that super efficiently while generating more cards. So you'll eventually run out of cards before you deal enough damage to their face, and then you lose. You could counter that with like the main way normally we countered plays like this historically is to deal more damage to their face faster, right? But the removals have gotten so efficient that we're past this tipping point now. The flips have gotten so ridiculous that we're past the point in which you can aggro your way to beating mages. I'm not saying you can't, but you need a very specific aggro kind of deck to do that.
And it's not reliable.
It's not reliable, and you need reach. And the reach cannot be based on the minions you have on the board because they're going to get removed. So like Bloodlust, Savage Roar are very iffy. You need like Pyroblast, which means you're a mage, which defeats the purpose. So you need like, I don't know, Starfire. Right? Like, that's the kind of stuff that you need. And multiples of those, like double swipes, like that kind of stuff. And just a lot of classes don't have those. And the ones that do don't get offered them too often. Really, Druid is the big one here that's going to get offered it a lot. Hunter can obviously do this because of their hero power. And everyone else kind of is out of luck. So you have effectively two classes that can run, and I include in this Demon Hunter because Demon Hunters can get blocked and then it's over with the taunt. So you effectively have just Hunter, Mage in the mirror match, and Druid that's able to play any kind of an aggressive game plan against you. And so if you are those classes, that's fine, that's an out. But for all the rest of the classes, you have to do the following. And it's not good. I'm not about to reveal to you the secrets of how to beat Mage because it's really hard to beat Mage. There's a lot of RNG involved, and like really, if I could very consistently beat Mage in its current incantation, I would have a much higher average than I do now. But these are the steps that you have to do in order to beat Mage. So, 1, you have to get the reads that you can. You can still get reads. Your reads will be messed up more often. They're less reliable. But you can get reads because you only need to get 2 types of reads from Mage. Mage reads are extremely simple. You cannot read, do not try to read anything combo-y that they're trying to do. Do not try to read a Firebrand. They may be saving it for a spell. You don't know how much mana that spell costs, so you don't know when they're playing it. You can't make reads on most small spells because they may be saving them for Spell Burst or for Firebrand. Like, you just don't... Throw, like, 75% of your old reads just out the window. Because that's the point of Spell Burst. You can't have reads anymore on spells. So, throw them out the window. But that remaining 25% of reads is very, very important. And that remaining 25% of reads is just 2 things. One is Polymorph, and one is Flame Strike. If you can consistently avoid getting Polymorph to death on your biggest minions, and consistently avoid getting Flame Strike when you have a big board, you will stand a better chance against Mage. Now, how do you read a Polymorph? You play something big, they don't play a Polymorph. So you have to sacrifice something, which means never play your big gigantic thing first. Always play your pretty big and pretty gigantic thing first. Let it get polymorphed. Let the Mage get like a 1 mana or 2 mana advantage on you, and then play the thing that you need to stay alive and win you the game. Like, don't just like play a bunch of like 3 drops and 4 drops and then throw a scrapyard out there. Mages have polymorphs, lots of polymorphs. It has like some weird offering rate bonus or something right now. Like, you can look at the stats, and they will polymorph you. With Flame Strike, mages don't have board clears anymore. They have weird ways to clear board, like combo-y ways to clear boards, like Merv says, but they usually involve using a lot of resources. So, I'm not saying if you avoid Flame Strikes, you won't get cleared off the board, but you will at least get something out of it, right? You will get the fact that they have to use up 2 of their cards, 3 of their cards, or something, right? To give you something back for your commitment onto the board. So make that Flame Strike read when you get it. Again, it's pretty easy to read. You have to like kind of have a Flame Strike-y kind of board, and then they don't use it. So don't commit super hard to it before that. Which brings you to the second part of this whole thing, which is after you get the read, immediately push your advantage. The turn after you get the read, you have to push whatever advantage it is that you got. You got to read they don't have a polymorph, drop your biggest, baddest thing out there. You got to read they don't have a flame strike, spread out on the freaking board with all that you have. Why? Because they're just going to start generating random cards. And they're going to hit their polymorph. They're going to hit their flame strike. It's just a matter of time. This isn't like the old days where like I have a read, there's no flame strike. I'm good. What are the odds he draws his one flame strike in his deck? Right? Like 1 out of 15. If I go do this 3 turns, 3 out of 15, those are such low odds. Now, they're going to hit it in 2 turns, 3 turns max. It's going to happen. So your window of exploiting this is very, 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 very small. But you can exploit it, because the alternative is to not exploit it and die. So this is your tiny window. When you discover it, you got to go for it. Also, feel free to, like, as long as the mage doesn't have spell damage minions on the board, feel free to, like, or good targets for whatever that card is. The 4 mana card that makes things really big. Echo. Twin spell. Conjure or something.
Conjure.
Yeah.
Conjure.
If they don't have that card, not they don't have that card. If they don't have like big minions that are like targets, that are good targets for that. So I wouldn't even consider just a big minion a target for that. I would consider like a high mana minion that's not so big anymore because it had a good battle cry or it's like already damaged or something. Like, if that's not... Because if they just, like, turn an 8-drop into a 9-drop and then summon another, like, 9-drop, that's not that bad. Like, if they're random 9-drops, they're probably worse than their 8-drop. Even if the 8-drop, like, they could trade into one of your minions and get a little damage, that's not that bad. Like, you're getting some of it, like, a decent amount of advantage out of it, but it's not, like, crazy. And you need to hit their face, because you need to, like, end the game. With your ridiculous amounts of tempo after a flame strike. If you have the one big giant thing and you can eat their other giant things, then obviously eat it. You don't necessarily have to go face. But for the most part, like you gotta take advantage of that window.
Yeah. It's a lot of this. Look, I think a lot of people have been listening to this, and some people will find this helpful. Some people who have faced a lot of mages will be pretty cynical. It's like, oh, I just need to have a read and then have that read immediately be blown out because they can discover something at any given moment.
Look, you have a read for a couple turns.
You have a read and you have to use it, like, because that's your only tool. Now, there's a reason that mages are number 1, right? It's like if you're able to easily play around them, and if you're able to like always punish them, they wouldn't be number 1. But they're number 1 for a reason. And you got to do what you got to do. Like, some people are still able to get very, very high averages. We were talking to Team America last night, and he said he just finished 30 runs, and he has a 7.8 over 30 runs. And, obviously, he's playing Mage for whenever he can. But it just goes to show, if mages were really that powerful and that random, well, stuff like this wouldn't be happening, right? So it's definitely possible. I feel for you guys. I've actually been playing a decent amount of Arena, and I felt it. I also have a current mage deck ongoing on EU, and it's just like I feel for my opponents, because every single turn I'm just like, okay, how do I just keep them off the board? And then eventually I just wear them down, right?
Yeah.
And to your point about the imprisoned Gnarg, I think people don't feel as bad about that.
Really?
Because I think people are more okay with, at the beginning, being like, all right, I'm super far behind. I guess that's it.
Okay, so they feel really bad immediately, but not just like dragged out bad turn after turn after turn.
I'm going to give you a decent example, okay? All right. You're on Fall Mountain. Okay, we're gonna use a Fall Guys example.
Always Fall Mountain. By the way, guys, if you're listening to this for Fall Guys commentary, don't worry. It's coming at the end of this podcast. We have set aside a block of time to talk about Fall Guys, but let's do Arena first with the Fall Guys tie-in as a metaphor.
All right, so I'm gonna give you 2 examples. I think this is a good example. You're on Fall Mountain. Immediately, some guy grabs you to get ahead of you. You forget to jump onto the orange thing, and then you fall off the orange thing as well. Now you're already like 5 seconds behind, right? And then you see 2 people, one on the left and one on the right. They are like playing perfectly, right? And then you end up losing by an insane amount. You're just like, okay, it wasn't my day. Versus you're like, you're doing okay. You get hit. The other guy is getting hit as well. It's like neck and neck. Both people are having some difficulties. And at the very end, some guy, like, you're jumping and some guy is jumping and they get it. And you're just like, wait, I thought I had it. That is always a little bit more frustrating.
All right,
like,
that's fair.
That's always more frustrating, right? You're just like, wait, I thought I was in it. Like, I thought, and then you're just like, it was close, but it really wasn't, like, it doesn't really matter. That's sort of the feeling you get with Mage. Whereas with like a Gnarg on one and with Warriors kind of, whenever they were really good, and then they had the follow-ups as well, you're like, okay, well, whatever. I knew I lost immediately. And even though you still played it out, like you did play it out whenever there was Gnarg, you just didn't feel as bad. You're like, okay, well, this wasn't my game, right? While in every single Mage game, you're just like, maybe.
But I like that feeling because it actually is a maybe. It's not actually a no. Like, that's the game, right? Like,
it is. But people, I think, in a feel like, how does the game feel for you situation? A lot of them, they don't like Gnarg on one,
right?
But for them, it's
but
just
the
like,
certainty of getting screwed is kind of mitigating the fact of how much they got screwed.
Right. Yeah. Or they like get screwed a little on turn 4, get screwed like a little bit more later on, and each time it's like discover generation, discover generation, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
See, I'm not. I guess that's just not me. For me, I'm just like when I see him begin on turn 1, I'm like, this game. And when I get slowly screwed by Mage, I'm like, well, if he only didn't get those 3 discovers into those 3 perfect cards, which seems to always freaking happen. The odds are not that good. We've run this in the algorithm, like to see like what the odds are pretty, like Mage discovers are not that good. Mage random cards are really not good. But like it just seems to always work out. I don't know. Okay, so my first thing of how to beat mages is to get a read and then immediately capitalize on it. Before you got a read and you were able to get more reads. Right now your reads are limited, but you get the major one still. And before you had like a few turns to execute your plan. And right now you really want to execute your plan on the very next turn. And keep in mind, especially if part of executing your plan is dropping minions, your minions don't do anything for another turn. So you've effectively given them 2 turns before before you have actually executed anything. And that's really all the time you have. So you gotta go. Don't... I guess you have to be confident in your read, right? Because I know a lot of people, like, they think they may have a read, and they're like, let me test it again. No. You tested it once, that's as good as you're going to get. Don't test it again. You don't have that time. You're just giving them more time to actually find their answer. Because the mage is not dumb. If the mage is holding a lot of cards in their hands, and they're like, I don't have a hard removal, what do you think they're going to do with their discoveries? Try to get a hard removal. Like, it's not rocket science. So you want to limit the time between when you know they don't have a hard removal and when they are able to get a hard removal. Which means you want to start the time in which you know that they don't have a hard removal earlier. And if that means you're a little less sure about it, then you got to play into it a little more. Like in the beginning. So that's kind of that part. Now the second part is, like Merp said, you can't execute this perfectly. You don't always get reads. Sometimes you only have one big thing. You can't like bait out a big thing for the polymorph. You kind of just have to go for it. And that's totally true. And that honestly will be true for like half your games. So in those cases where you just kind of have to do something and, you get random cards, you don't get as many cards as the mage, not a lot of choice that you can do. What you have to do is, until you get that read, is to do the opposite of what you do after you get the read, which is to not commit. Instead, you have to save for the flip. You have to save for the refill. The flip is, the mage does something, I need to push back and get back on the board, right? Shavera is your like best example of this, right? That works really good when you're off the board and not so good when you're on the board. But you also have a lot of your class tools and whatever for that. You now have that 4-drop that deals 2 damage to everything with a spell burst or other stuff, right? Just like anything that's for the flip, anything that's tempo related and not like card advantage related, that's the flip. So you have to save for the flip until you're sure, because the mage is going to get on the board somehow. And when the mage gets on the board, you give them 2 turns and then they're like super on the board. Like they flip so fast. because they have those 7/6 elementals that generate. They have their conjurers. Like, the mages can do stuff with minions now in a way that they really couldn't before, and they could just like generate a lot of gigantic minions to put down, right? So you got to save for the flip. Now, the other part of it is saving for the refill. If what you're afraid of is not really a flip, because you're like ahead, it's like difficult to conceive. You're not ahead the way Merps was ahead by like 10 health on the board. Like, that's not really that ahead in today's meta. That's like just being ahead. I'm talking about like you are ahead. You have the board locked down. You're trying to deal damage to the mage, but you still have to clear their board. And you're just like not dealing enough damage to end the game immediately, but you're like winning, right? You're not like just winning. You are super winning. In those cases, you still need to save if you don't have the read. If you have the read, remember, push. But if you don't have the read, you still have to save. Don't go all the way, even if it feels like, oh, this is my moment, you know, like I need to put this out now. If you don't have the read, and you're not desperate because you still have hands and like stuff you can do in your hand, you don't commit super hard. Instead, you save for the refill. Because if you don't have a read on the mage and you are not desperate, it is much more likely that the mage can totally wreck you than that the mage cannot totally wreck you. We're in this world now. We're absent a read, rather than saying, oh, it is unlikely that the mage has these weird combos that will totally wipe me off the board. It is now, the mage is actually very likely to totally wipe me off the board. So, if I have a deck that's aggro, for example, or I don't have many cards in my hand, then I gotta do it, right? Because if they totally wipe me off the board, I lose anyway. There's nothing I can do. But if you can save for a refill, if you can be like, look, I can get wiped off the board, and as long as the mage doesn't come onto the board and I just like put out my tempo again, I'm still fine, then you save for that. Because it's more likely that the mage will totally wipe you off the board, or just stall your board with a flame ward or something, right? That'll make so you can't kill them fast. Than it is that they can't do that. So those are your tips. When you have the read, go immediately. Before you have the read, as long as you're not desperate, save for stuff. Save for the flip if you're a little bit ahead or you know, not ahead, and save for the refill if you are very ahead. But save.
Yep. All right. That's mage, kind of, sort of. Good luck.
Yeah. So let's talk about the other reason why Mage is really good, besides all their really good cards, and their endless card generation and stuff. And that is 3-drops. 3-drops are very rare these days. We all know this because we are all missing 3-drops. Everybody's missing 3-drops, not just you. You can make up for it by doing weird things like hero powering and playing a 1-drop. You can play a 2-drop and just pretend it's a 3-drop. You can do nothing on turn 3, which a lot of people do if you're playing a long game and you have a lot of taunts, for example, or you're just playing off the board like you're a mage. It may not matter that much, but we all have a 3-drop problem. So one of Mage's big advantage is that they don't really have a 3-drop problem, because they have class cards that are 3-drops and that are rated really highly. And when you have stuff like that, then you don't actually have a 3-drop problem. And that is a huge advantage in drafting. Because if you have a 3-drop problem, in order to like survive, because curve is still pretty important now, because there's plenty of successful decks out there that are like actually quite aggro. Like, whenever I make a deck that doesn't have taunts and cannot play off the board, which sometimes happens, right? You can't control how all of your decks turn out. I'm like, this deck just isn't going to go all the way, because I'm going to face enough good aggro decks that this deck is going to lose. Like, it may be fine. It's not like I'm going to get less than 5 wins with it, but I mean, I might, but I mean, I'm not going to average less than 5 wins with that kind of deck. But it's just, I'm not going to like escape all the aggro decks magically by matchups. It's just very unlikely. So you do need the curves, and so Mage is at an advantage in there in that they do have class cards. Now, I'm going to list out the classes that do not have class 3-drops, which means in order to play these classes, you really have to take into account this when you're drafting. And some of these classes are quite good. So the 4 classes that have almost no access to good 3-drops, or like they have 1 good 3-drop or something, are Demon Hunters, Druids, Rogues, and Priests. Rogues and Priests are number 2 and number 3 before a giant gap, right? So it is totally possible to win in this meta without good 3-drops. But when you're drafting, you need to know that. and you need to prioritize your lack of 3-drops. So if you're generally playing Mage, Rogue, and Priest, because they're the best classes, you may get the feeling that the 3-dropness is like a huge problem. Unless you're Mage. Because for you, it is. Because Rogues and Priests don't have much 3-drops, and Mages do. But the other classes, the bad classes that people don't play, actually some of them do okay in 3-drops, and you'll be fine. In fact, we ran an analysis with our algorithm, and huge caveat, we have no idea how Blizzard freaking adjusted the offering rates. But in a world of an unadjusted offering rate, just like with all these cards in the pool by the offering rate that Blizzard told us that the offering rate rules are, which we know is not true, you would be more in danger of not getting enough 4-drops than not getting enough 3-drops in the vast majority of classes. So the 3-drop issue, one, is limited to just a few classes. There's some of the most popular classes, but just a few of the classes. And two, you really also have to worry about 4-drops. So instead of generalizing this idea of a lack of 3-drops, I think it helps more to look at it class by class. And it's very important in the draft, right? Because you know that there's somewhat of a 3-drop problem, and so you need to take some 3-drops, but you don't want to reach for the 3-drops if your class is actually fine on 3-drops. So I just want to make sure, because this isn't something that I knew. It's just hard to know it, so we had to calculate it, and then it turns out the difference is actually very big. Class to class, your drop expectations are so different. It's not Druids are going to get 1 more 2-drop. No, they're going to get 4 more 2-drops. So that's a big deal when it comes to how much you value 2-drops in your draft. You should not value them as much.
That's fair.
Nope. That's my word of wisdom to people on the drafting side. And I feel it too whenever I'm drafting. I have about as much trouble getting 4-drops as 3-drops. But I've been playing bad classes and stuff without a particular focus on Mage.
All right. That's where we're at right now.
Yep, that's where we're at. So, what's your prediction on micro adjust? Do you think it's going to happen this week, or do you think it's not going to happen for a couple weeks?
I don't think it's going to happen for a couple weeks. That's just me. I don't know. It just seems too soon. Not too soon as in we don't need it. It's just too soon for me to expect Blizzard to do something like that. My expectations for them are pretty low. I'll just say that. But no, I don't kind of expect it anytime soon, which means the advice that you gave should be pretty relevant, as in you should be be prepared to face mages for quite a little bit. And then once they do adjust it, I'm expecting something like mages and rogues to get hit pretty hard.
Yeah.
They like to hit those pretty hard. And it could be very, very possible that once they adjust, mages, Blizzard doesn't like to do things with a soft brush, They hit them over the head with a hammer. So they could definitely hammer mages into oblivion. And then, you just won't see any of these cards once again. And then the ones to keep an eye on, if they do adjust, are sort of the priest paladins. Priest, because you might think, oh, wait, mercs. But they're right there with rogue. Why would they just nerf rogue and not priest? Blizzard has done stuff like that before, in which the very close number 3 class, which should get nerfed as well. Because, all right, let's face it. Rogue and Priest are just tied at number 2. There's literally no difference between them. Right now, it's a 0.1% difference. You check back into
but the Rogues are better than Priests right now.
This
is just average player stats.
Yeah. So the thing, so I could totally see them kind of not touching Priest, and they are in no way going to nerf Paladin, and in fact, they might actually bring up Paladin a little bit. So if I were a betting man, if I were to predict sort of if there were to adjust, Priest and Paladins have a decent shot of taking over the meta, which is never great. Is never great at the same time.
So much apathy if that happens. So much apathy.
I know.
I think that there is also quite a significant chance that they super buff shamans to take over everything, because shamans are doing so badly right now that they're gonna just buff all the ridiculous shaman cards and offering rates. And with shaman, because they do, it's like warrior, right? And oh look, warrior's down there too. Like when these two classes have their ridiculous cards buffed, you get a lot of ridiculousness. So Merps is afraid of the priest and paladin as a number 3 and number 4. I'm afraid of number 9 and number 10. Like if it's even less subtle of a nerf hammer or whatever than Merps is saying, we could be in a much more terrible meta. Because priest and paladin's bad, but warrior and shaman are no better when it comes to being at the very top. Yeah. Okay. So that's our generalized, I guess, predictions. I want to talk a little bit about the tier list. I have an update coming. Fingers crossed it's going to come Monday, because we've been working so much on it. It's been getting in the way of me playing Fall Guys, which is unacceptable. But ZD Man has been spending so much time in the algorithm. I've been spending so much time in the algorithm. We have been doing stuff kind of to see this meta and where it's going, and also to fix a couple of bugs that some of these bugs I'm just like, how are they still in the algorithm? They don't have the most gigantic effect, but they affect I don't know, half the cards by 2-3 points. That's a lot. Not in terms of 2-3 points is not a lot, but you add up all those points, right? That's a huge thing, and we just but I guess if everything's 2-3 points off, you don't really quite notice it. But some stuff like that, we caught and we fixed, and then other things, there's meta adjustments that are literally just we're okay, the game is just fundamentally different now, so we need to update the way we thought about the game, which isn't really our fault, and is definitely not Blizzard's fault. It's just the game changed. The game needs updating. The fundamentals change, right? So there's going to be a pretty big update coming out. I know I previewed it before as big cards are going up, but it turns out small cards are going up too. Not just big cards. I thought, silly me, that small cards, once we added this tempo thing that affect everything, small cards would actually go down or not change because of how the game works now. But it turns out that when you have a lot of cards, and the system better accounts for the fact that you have a lot of cards in your hand towards the very late game, small cards stay relevant for longer in the game. I was thinking that because there are more turns that's happening in the later that matters, that we're not accounting for perfectly, like turn 15 and whatever, you want bigger stuff in those turns because you have 10 mana to work with, and you can't penalize them the same way, because having a 10 mana card, if you're going to have 8 turns in the game be relevant where you have 10 mana, is very different than having a 10 mana card where you only have 3 turns in the game that's relevant with 10 mana, right? You just have much more turns to play it and use it, and it's an option, and rather than a dead card in your hand. And that's true. You're going to see the top end, especially something like Scrapyard, go up. What's Scrapyard going up by? Let me search this. Scrapyard's going up by 20 points. Like I said from before, the meta has moved in a way that's about double our expectations. Because we outlined for you that we think something like Scrapyard was going to move 10 points. So it's going to move 20 points. But also, the small cards, as you go, if your hand is full on turn 15 or 16 or 17, rather than before when it was empty, well, now your 1 mana cards actually provide tempo. Whereas before, it was just a small card when you really wanted to top deck a big one, right? Now, it's a small card that's useful because you combine it with other small cards and you get more tempo than just playing a big card. So, small cards are actually, they've gone up. Not hugely, but I'll see. I think Elven Archer is my standard example. Elven Archer went up 8 points. Nothing's changed about Elven Archer, but in a game in which you're going to turns 15 and 16 and you're top decking, Elven Archer is worse than in games in which you go to turn 20 without top decking. Because then you have more uses for a 1 mana quick thing, rather than just, oh, this card's too small. So, okay. So those are some of the big changes that are going to happen. You'll see almost everything change. We said before we fixed the stealth thing, so stealth on curve is going up. What are some of the biggest changes that's coming? Just so people, what can I preview that's relevant? Some of the biggest changes, like legendary stuff. Pyroblast went up by a lot. It's just really good now to end games.
It's true as well. It's very true.
Yeah. Scrapyard Colossus is one of the biggest winners. Transfer Student went up a ton. 20 points.
So this is one of those things where and I always try to emphasize it a lot, like throughout our long reviews, where every time I say something about kind of like how classes are, about how good sort of a type of card is, you'll notice I always kind of preface it or add something. It's like, and depending on what Blizzard does, or depending on how Blizzard sets the meta, because it really is impossible to predict. Because if Blizzard did it in such a way that, like, okay, well, now this sort of grouping of cards is going to be seen more often. This sort of, this type of card is going to be seen less often or whatever. You can predict that. But they've created a Frankenstein monster within Arena where I'm willing to bet a decent amount of money that not one singular person at Blizzard knows exactly what's going on.
Oh yeah, I would bet so much money on that.
Because
what they have money.
Yeah, what they have done throughout all of the changes is that the smart way to do these changes would be to when you change something, when you're coming in to change, for the next round, like let's say change 1.0, when you come in for like change 1.1 or something, what you're supposed to do is look at your changes that you put in 1.0 and be like, okay, let's either build upon that or let's get rid of some of those and then like fill in the gaps. What Blizzard has done consistently every single time, they have basically ignored 1.0 and those sort of levers and buttons that they push and sort of structures they put into place, and just layered stuff on top of it. So what happens is that as time goes on, they just have all of these different things, antiquated relics from a different time, but very, very like very strong mechanisms affecting card rates and offering odds and all of that stuff. And now you see all of these relics with all of these new things, and every single time they want to change something, for some reason they're just like, let's not, like, they don't even look at what they've done. They're just like, okay, what sort of big sweeping catch-all changes can we make with things that I think are problematic right now, and then they like overdo some things, they don't catch some things. It's very weird. And then if you dig into the actual numbers, stuff that people like Dr. Stein have done, we have done, Tarot have done, and every single time we do that, we come out of it very confused. We're just like, this doesn't make any sense. Why is this high and that low? Like, there's no connecting sort of theme anymore, because there never was, because they never cared about continuity and like sort of efficiency or cleanliness going from one change to another.
Yup. I mean, that's why we are where we are, and that's why, like, I really wish we could be more accurate, like, on the predicting side before we see the meta, but it's so hard. Because, I mean, it's literally impossible, not just, like, hard. But, hey, at least we can adjust to it vaguely afterwards, based on what Blizzard's doing. Okay. So that's Arena, that's Hearthstone. Look for the update on Monday, or I'm gonna say like Tuesday latest, because we're just gonna push this out, even if there's a little more things to do. Oh, something nice. I know a lot of people keep telling me about this, and we fixed 2 bugs. Well, sorry, we fixed 3 bugs actually. Well, I'm calling them bugs. One of them is, 2 of them are not bugs. One was an oversighted input. Another one was the stealth thing that we fixed overall for all stealth curve things that we just like weren't doing before. And a third one was a legit bug. So there were 3 things that was affecting Scorpid, which was causing its score to be low compared to what it should be. Now those are fixed or added or whatever. Scorpid's still not as high as you guys want it, but it is the second best 4-drop now, which is a lot better than it was doing before. And I think with everyone's experience, it was very clear that Scorpid was better than where we had been rating it.
It's a Scorpid meta.
Yeah,
like
it's a pretty Scorpid meta.
Yeah, it's a very Scorpid meta, and the effect whenever it's getting used is very high, you know? And it's like hard to find a time in which Scorpid is actually bad. Sometimes it's only decent, and a lot of times it's like very, very good, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I'm glad we fixed that so that seems more normal. But there's a lot of things happen. But like we normally say, right? I count it as a miss if it's more than 12.5% away from the score. And there's not that many cards that move more than 12.5%, and very few of them are new cards. Mostly because there's just a lot of old cards, and when you move everything in a big way, like you're just much more likely to have old cards move. Like Magma Rager lost 19 points.
Oh no!
It went from don't pick this to really don't pick this.
Oh no, Magma Rager.
Yeah. Something like sort of relevant, maybe like Blood Imp lost 29 points. You shouldn't have been picking it before, but some people maybe were. I know I was not viewing it as like the most terrible card ever, but it is the most terrible card ever apparently. And if you look at the win rates, it's kind of the most terrible card ever. So we looked into it a number of times, but we did a bunch of stuff with stealth, and just every time we did something with stealth, Blood Image just got worse and worse.
Yep.
On the other hand, Puzzle Box gained 29 points. Just, you know, it was already a 170 almost, so it didn't really. No. So now it's almost a 200. It's like knocking on the door of 200.
I always, Puzzle Box is one of those things where I'm. It's a little bit near and dear to my heart, just because number one, it's a fun card, and number two, I remember it was one of those cards when it first came out. We were just like, it's amazing. Mm-hmm. It is amazing.
Yeah.
And some people were surprised at it.
Some people were like, this is unplayable for good players. Like, a lot of people actually were like, this is unplayable for good players. And we were just like, nope, 170, go. I think we actually put it at 150, and it eventually rose to 170 as we fixed a couple more bugs that only made it better.
Yeah, and right now it's also a really good meta for the box, because it's so easy for mages to get to box now. And if you can, that's the thing with box. It's so consistent. It's sneaky consistent, right? Because everything about it, you're just like, oh my god, this can't be consistent. It's disgustingly consistent.
Because you trigger it 10 times. Like, that's why you eventually get consistency, right? If you generate enough random cards, you're going to get the cards you want.
It's disgustingly consistent. So if you can get to box, it's everything. It's like people always remember how good Ultimate Infestation is, right? They're like, wait, I get to do damage, I get to develop, a medium-sized minion, and I get to draw cards. That's box. You actually get to, like a decent amount of time, clear more. You get to deal just more than just 5 damage. You just lack the overall consistency of UI, of knowing exactly what you get, So it's it's crazy to compare something that is seemingly as random as box to something super duper great and consistent like Ultimate Infestation, but that's where we're at.
Yeah. All right. So I think that covers it for Hearthstone. If you're waiting for the Battleground content, nothing's happening with Battlegrounds. I haven't been playing Battlegrounds. They're probably going to update it once September rolls around with like an actual update, not just like a small thing. But
Battlegrounds definitely needs a little bit of a kick, a little bit of a spice to it. I have no motivation these days. I don't even watch it anymore. I'd rather watch Fall Guys than Battlegrounds. Look, I still love the game mode, obviously. I can't believe I'm saying this, but right now, if I were to play Hearthstone, which Keck W, it's Fall Guys. I'd rather play Arena just to figure stuff out. And you know, part of that comes from the fact that I you know, we do this show and I want to be prepared to talk to you guys. But also part of it is just because really Battlegrounds, the structure hasn't changed, and Eudora still pisses me off to a extraordinarily high degree.
I'm surprised Eudora's been in this same exact state for this long without a patch. This has been what, like 3 months?
Yeah, and the thing with okay, so when Hook Tusk and Eudora were, you know, the 1-2 punch of the meta, right? Hook Tusk was always the Tyrion, you know, the guy that was consistent and could get number 1 or number 2 a lot, but didn't deal a lot of damage to you. And Eudora was always the you know, the class that was dealing tons and tons of damage to you. So it was surprising that they kind of took away the more consistent one, right? Which actually let people play.
Well, that one, like Hook Tusk had a fundamental problem with its design.
Yeah.
Where it literally required twice the amount of clicks of the next closest hero. Like, it was very outliery. Like, I feel like that was more of a design problem than even a balance problem. Which probably meant that's why it got faster attention. Whereas Eudora is not a design problem in their mind. They probably are okay with the amount of RNG it happens. It's just a balance problem.
Yeah, it's a balance problem, and it's a really feels bad problem. Like, Eudora is one of the most feels bad characters of all time.
Like, it's the same thing as Millhouse. Remember how long Millhouse was in that state of overpowerness? It's because it was a balance problem. They had solved their design problem, but they haven't solved their balance problem, and so Millhouse remained like super OP for like 2 months.
Yeah, that was really the thing with and it was I think Millhouse is a good example of that as well, where you see the same things with Millhouse that you see with Eudora. Power spikes that no one can match at certain points. We all know about the 6 gold and 7 gold Millhouse. You know, if you face Millhouse, especially if you face Millhouse on 6 gold, you're probably taking like 8 damage. Sometimes you could take more than that. It was disgusting because they could just buy so much more stuff than you.
Yeah.
And you know, they can get to later tiers a lot earlier, and then smack you with their like Calagoses when you're just still trying to build up your like security rover and deflecto bot. They already have buff Calagoses, which kind of feels the same with Eudora, right? And they get their second dig, and as soon as they get their second dig...
The second dig is so bad. Like...
Yeah.
They really just need, like, really to make Eudora a balanced character, they just need one thing. And that one thing is you are not allowed to dig on turn 1.
Yeah.
Like, that would solve so many problems just by that.
I mean, that's a huge step in the right direction, right? If we're talking about elegant solutions, that is one of them. Not allowing Eudora to, just not allowing her to dig on turn 1 shifts the volatility of the entire lobby a lot, right? Because right now, it's always correct essentially to, you know, by statistics it's like correct to dig on turn 1, and what it does to the meta or it just like turbocharges the speed of the lobby and increases the
swing. It just increases the swing too much. Or like the other elegant solution that I can think of is to make it so that after you successfully dig, there's one turn that you can't dig, which basically comes to the same like so like it reads the same thing, and it's like after a successful dig, you cannot dig for a turn, right? Like,
it's a cooldown. Okay.
You have a 1-turn cooldown on your successful dig.
Right.
Like, my actual solution, which I also think was their original design, that they eventually were like, oh, we can't allow this level of RNG in the game, is that I really think their original design for the character is 25% chance to successfully dig. Like, I think that was the original design when it was pitched. And then they play tested it, and they're like, this feels terrible. And so they're like, oh, let's make it consistent. And now it became too good because it's consistent and you can plan for it. But it feels like less bad. Like, we still think it feels bad to face Eudora, right? But I'm pretty sure it feels less bad than if Eudora's hero power actually said 25% chance to make a successful dig. Even though that hero power would actually be balanced right off the bat.
Yeah, well, I mean, can you imagine just like someone successful digging on like turn 1, successful digging on turn 2 or something, and just like and then just blowing away the lobby. Like
Yeah.
no one ever stood a chance, right? No one ever
I
stood
don't
a
know if
chance.
they like will never stand a chance then, because if you're successful digging on turn 1, what do you get? You get a golden 1-drop, which is probably pretty useless, and then you get to discover a 2-drop. So yeah, you're ahead of the lobby, but you're not like that ahead.
Sorry,
I
sorry.
mean?
What I meant by 1 and 2, like your first 2 digs that like whenever you are able, whenever
Right,
you want
right.
to dig, right?
Okay.
Sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
What I meant on 1 is not exactly in turn 1, because
Okay.
then it's like not exactly efficient for you. Just be like, always dig, always dig,
Mm-hmm.
always dig. You're like digging, right? But yes, so like whenever your first dig, let's say for example, maybe your first dig could be like turn 3. So on 5 gold, you don't like just sell and double buy. What you do is buy, like roll, buy, dig. You know, for
Mm-hmm.
example,
Yep.
if they did something like that,
Yep.
and then if you get like if you hit that 25% chance on turn 3, that's huge, because you have a chance of getting a golden tier 2 minion and then a tier 3 minion on turn 3, in which that's like
Yep.
super AFK, right?
Right.
Super duper AFK.
But that's like 25% chance, like.
And you know, you hit that a decent amount of times, right? So and then let's say after that you level, right? You level like, and then the next turn you like double buy and you dig, and imagine if you get another one there, then you win the lobby, right? Then you just like coast through the lobby. So it's stuff like this in which I've thought about that as well, and that's why I'm like ready with these examples of being like, oh yeah, so this is exactly what would happen. But yeah, they could never do that. That would just be super feels bad.
Yeah.
Yep.
So they did make some announcements on Battlegrounds. One is that the balance patch is coming next patch. We don't know when next patch is, but maybe it'll be coming soon, and it will have changes to like not just heroes like Eudora, but also minions. But they didn't announce when the patch is, so it's like some people are excited that's going to happen soon, but I'm not going to be that excited, like hopeful. This is the August period where Blizzard really does not like to update stuff. So we'll see about that. But Blizzard did also say that they're not going to adjust. Everybody's been clamoring that things that come out of death rattles, like the random minions, they don't deal the amount of damage that's based on their tiers, because that doesn't make any sense. And they should only deal 1 damage or no damage. And Blizzard has come straight out and announced that they're not doing that. So Blizzard does not think that there is a problem with the swings in Death Rattle minions popping out. I think they carved out an exception or two. They said they may look into like Boat and like maybe one other card, but overall they don't think it's a problem. Pagel, yeah. Boat and
think
Pagel.
that Boat and Pagel are.
Yeah, I mean Pagel's especially bad, but
Yes.
I don't think there's anything special about Boat. Like it's bad the same way other stuff is bad. Like
the thing with Boat is that when you have the opportunity to get Boat at that time, and it's like that level of damage, and it's not even RNG, and like it spawns 3 pirates, like the spacing is always an issue. Whenever you have access to a Boat, it's typically a little bit more acceptable. Whenever you're on 4 discovering into a 5 and you get Pagel, like that, the volatility there is a little bit too high for that point. And I do understand we're not super far apart. We're like 2 turns apart.
Those are huge 2 turns.
Yeah, it's at that point where 2 turns you start to get exponential rather than just like slightly additive, right? It's like, what's the difference between like turn 3 and turn 4? It's additive. Turn 4 and turn 5, it's additive. Turn 5 and turn 6, it's a a bigger jump, but I would say it's still like additive. And then later on, you get like exponential growth, because you get stuff like the Amalgadons, and you get all these super scaling stuff. So yeah, those 2 turns are really, really important, and Pagel's damage is a little bit too early and a little bit too random for people to be happy about.
Yep. Well, that's Battlegrounds. We'll wait for the patch and then jump back in and see what's happening there. I'm on vacation next week, so it would be really nice if they made the update next week so I could actually dedicate some time to it. But so far, all of me and Merps' time, all of our free time, and our not free time, just our lack of sleep time, have been dedicated to this game called Fall Guys. We talked to you about it on the last podcast, and question from the GOAT this week is, hey guys, have you played more Fall Guys? Talk to us more about Fall Guys. And to that I say, if you've been watching our stream, you know we've been playing Fall Guys till 5 a.m. And if you've been in our Discord or, just generally like hearing us rant about random things, you've realized we also played a lot of Fall Guys off stream. So we have a lot of experience. How many crowns do you have now, Merps?
I have crowns are like actual wins.
Win.
So I have won the crown because remember you get 3 in the battle pass. I have won 25 times.
Merps has won the game 25 times.
Yes.
Wow. At one point, he was like, "Oh, I've gotten 3 in a row wins," which is insane to me. I've never gotten like 2 in a row.
It was like the luckiest run ever. I did a solo queuing, which I don't know what happened during those. But yeah, we have been playing it a lot. How many wins are you at?
I'm at 7. Because
you've been stuck on 7.
I was stuck on 6 for a while. In my last, I don't know, maybe 15 hours, I've gotten 1 crown. Which is way less than in my first 15 hours of playing the game when I totally sucked. So I blame a lot of it on you. And PJ, which is Team America, who's been playing a lot with us, and Matt and Larry, who Matt is Talon Dragon, Larry is someone without a handle online, so we just call him Larry.
He is Larry, yes.
He's Larry, and we're good together, and we make the final queue all the time. As in more than 75% of the time, we'll make it to the finals. Almost all 4 of us, if not, or 3 of us. But they're very good players. So that's the problem, really, with queuing as 4 people. You got a lot more practice at the final round, which is good, and it's a fun game. But your chances of getting a crown, I feel like my chance of getting a crown may be being hurt because I'm guaranteeing that I'm in a final lobby with 2 or 3 really good players. So that can't work in my favor. That'll work in my favor on team games, right? When I have them on my team. And it doesn't matter in the other games where there's a lot of people that can finish. But when only one person gets the crown, I think it really hurts my odds when I'm guaranteed to play with top players all the time.
Yeah, but we have been making the finals a huge amount. The game is still really, really fun. They introduced a new final, a final elimination round, a final showdown.
Yeah, it's a good one.
It's a good one. It's very much so in the spirit of Fall Guys, where you just have wacky eliminations. No more tail games, please.
I like tail games. It's just not the best game for the last mission. I like tail games until the last mission, and they need to change the tail games to count rather than time, rather than be just when the timer ends.
Yeah. But I will say, if you guys haven't checked out Fall Guys yet, definitely check out Fall Guys. The more you play it, the more you recognize there's some pretty deep strats in Fall Guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
And exploits. Not terrible exploits, but just little things you can do that you're this is non-obvious and it is not good game design, but it is in the physics of the game.
Yeah, you shouldn't even call them exploits. They're shortcuts. They're shortcuts or kind of little kind of. Yeah. They're just sort of shortcuts. Literally shortcuts sometimes, in levels. But definitely check it out if you're looking for something fun and wacky, but actually quite skill testing.
Yeah.
For example, Hexagon, the final level, that you can tell how good people have gotten at that game because we'll consistently get finals in which I'm playing pretty well, and I look at everyone else, I'm everyone knows exactly what they're doing.
Yeah.
And the amount of split second decision and execution that's needed for that game is insane. It's so insane. Yeah, so shout out to Revolver Studios for making such an addictive but deep game. I can't believe I'm saying it, but it really is a deep game.
The last time both me and Merce are on board with a game that is not Hearthstone was Overwatch. So that's like the quality of game that Fall Guys has managed to hit, which is kind of insane. So, like, I think 3 days ago was the first day where I was like looking at lobbies and like when people were finishing in the Hexagon games, and I was like, oh, this is like a really good lobby. Like, people are really skilled in here. And then that was 3 nights ago. And then like by last night, every time I see a Hexagon lobby, if I'm spectating, I'm like, oh yeah, of course everyone's at the skill level. Like, that's how fast the skill level in this game has improved in the last few days. And it's only going to get worse from here. So I may never get another crown. You never know. I mean, okay, that's not true. There's always RNG Mountain. I will always get a crown every now and then. Although they have consistently, I kid you not now, this count is up to 14 times in a row, where if there is a second row in Fall Mountain in the starting position, because Fall Mountain, you race up a mountain, so if you start in the second row and not the first row, you're at a significant disadvantage. I have started in the second row or even farther back 14 times in a row. There was one match. Yeah, I'm only playing with Murph basically. So like this is verifiable. I'm streaming most of this too. The one time that I was in the front row was because there was only 5 players, and so they had to put me in the front row. So I didn't count that one.
The next time, it was like after the 5 time, there were 6 people in the finals, and of course, Adwicto was the one person in the second row. Team American can back this up as well. It's become just so hilarious in our games together, where we go to Fall Mountain and we know Adulta is either in the second or third row consistently every single time. I don't understand how it's possible. It's like those people on the Arena HS who show off and they complain that they got the coin 12 games in a row or something. No, that's Adulta.
So, like, this is why I'm not winning. Like, I'm not even getting my RNG wins, is the problem, right? Like, I understand I'm not getting my skill wins. I can explain that with a lack of skill. But the RNG, come on. That was built for people like me.
Yep. But yes, definitely check out the game. There's a lot to learn, and there's also just an addictive quality to winning, right? Yeah. Winning is fun, which is a very Adulta thing to say. Winning is fun. But yes, definitely check it out. The meta also changes in Fall Guys. The aggro, it's a very aggressive meta right now. Everyone's grabbing you these days, so be prepared. I would say the proper response is to sometimes grab back, sometimes very loosely grab back. But don't get too grabby, because for a lot of the games, the grabbers don't end up winning. All right, that's where we're at. And I'm saying this while Adulta in vain tries to fix his camera while being super dramatic.
I did it. I fixed my camera. So whatever, it just wouldn't focus my face. It just wouldn't recognize that I have a face and focus on that. So I have to like trick it by putting my hand really, really close to the camera and then making it focus on my hand, then dragging it into my face until I smack myself in the face, and then quickly moving my hand out. So it thinks my face is my hand.
Is that some sort of self-diss? Like, how bad is your face such that facial recognition doesn't even recognize your face as a face?
No, you know? It's just racist technology, man. That's what it is.
Could it be the goatee perhaps messing up what the camera thinks is an acceptable face? Is that possible?
I have no comments about that. Logitech can answer that question.
All right.
Okay, that's it for this podcast. We have let's make the announcement. Just because it's kind of a low-key announcement. We don't want to make too big of a deal about it, but it's kind of a big deal. Because of COVID and Fall Guys, and because we've recently, like in the past few months, played more Battlegrounds than Arena for a while, I don't think we're like a variety streamer or anything, but it felt more permissible for us to stream things that are not Hearthstone Arena and still have an audience and people who care and want to actually watch that, instead of people who are like, why are you not playing Arena? Which we still get a lot of. But because of all that, and it's COVID, and we don't have to commute, and we just have extra time on our hands because we also can't go out because we totally go out normally. That's a part of our lives. It's not. We are adding an extra day of streaming to bring our total streaming nights up from 4 back up to 5, which has not been the case for over 2 years, if not 3 years. I can't remember when the last time was that we had 5 nights a week consistently. So we haven't decided if the extra night is going to be Wednesday or Thursday night yet, or maybe even Saturday night. I don't know, because Saturday nights are just any other nights now. But we are adding a night, and that night will be for Fall Guys. So if you're trying to get excited about like Arena or Battlegrounds, not going to get an extra Arena or Battlegrounds stream. But when something happens, right, in Arena or Battlegrounds, maybe we'll be playing that instead, right? Like, it's a flexible night thing, but we just don't commit to playing Hearthstone on that night. Now, we realize this because we've been playing Fall Guys pretty much every night since it came out, which is at that point, you're like, okay, we might as well stream some of these because people want to watch us do this, and it's fun having everybody else confirm that you were screwed so freaking hard. So we're gonna have a Fall Guys night that will at points maybe turn into other nights, but maybe not. And maybe if we ever drop Fall Guys and play another game, it could just be a variety game, kind of like night or whatever.
So swing by and catch Adukta on his chase to 20 victories, because you got to get that achievement.
I do. I definitely need to get that achievement. I will get that achievement at some point.
Yeah. If you just keep playing.
I'm just gonna keep playing until I get that achievement. So that's happening, and we plan to keep doing this at least until COVID is done, which probably means we're gonna be doing this for the rest of our lives. But so that's the current plan, at least until COVID is done in the United States. All right, that's it for us. Hope you guys have a good week, and we will be back next week when hopefully there will be a Battlegrounds patch, but maybe not. Maybe we'll just talk more about Fall Guys. Have a good night, everybody. Until next time, this is Adwikta.
This is Murph. See you guys.